Today we're going to discuss one of the most romanticized positions in football, the number 10. The number 10 is a position that requires a lot of skill, a lot of creativity, and above all, it's a position that has evolved over time. And how it has done that, it didn't die. It was just reborn in a different shape. Player that comes to mind for me is Zidane. Zidane was that type of a player that was very instrumental in France winning the World Cup, beating Brazil in the final, even scoring. But his forte was his creativity, his skill on the ball. His technique on the ball was second to none. And that genius allowed him to play that central role. However, that has changed significantly now. It's become more of an 8 and a 10. It's become a hybrid position. And today we think about players in the mold of De Bruyne. We think about players like Odegaard. We think about players like Fernandes, who plays in the same role. The shape hasn't really changed too much in that it develops as the game goes. It starts more as a central midfield position, but it's a free role where the players are able to roam into areas, and this is the position that particular player plays. He plays a position where he starts in the center, but from time to time, you would see him getting into those half spaces to ensure that he creates for the striker, for the wide attackers to come inside and assist. And he is ably supported by the two number 6s. And that also allows for the fullbacks to exploit the wide areas. So that is how this position has evolved and has become a hybrid, which I said it becomes a hybrid in as far as the position, meaning it becomes an 8 and a 10. Where in the past, it was only an 8, who never really defended too much. The job is obviously, like we explained earlier on, is to create, but also to be able to be involved in the build-up and to assist when defensively the team requires assistance. Today, there's no player in the world that is a luxury player. In the time of Zidane, they were a little bit more allowed to just be that point of reference. That has changed significantly. And I think it works as well, because you get creativity without defensive liability. And that is exactly what most coaches and most clubs are looking forward to today. The game is more dynamic, it's more intense, lots more running. I mean, players in this position cover between 11 and 12 kilometers. Teams can press without defensive liability, as we said, but without leaving holes. You don't want to leave holes, because this is where that player plays a pivotal role. When the team is pressing, he forms that pivotal role in playing just behind these players, and he has great anticipatory skills. So he can see something before it happens and is able to cut out those passes. So he plays between the lines and he ensures that he cuts off any of those killer passes between the lines. Very important player. Most teams in the world today utilize this particular position. We're going to now look at the wide number 10. Very importantly, realizing these are the type of players that we'll find in today's football: Foden, Palmer, Saka, and Yamal. What a fantastic player as well. They play a little bit differently. They don't really start in the center. They play more invertedly. So they play closer to those half spaces in the field. And what they really do is they are able to play more or less in a 4-3-3 formation, where they drift inside into those half spaces. But the job is, as a central defender, they receive between the lines. So even though they may not be playing centrally, they receive in between the lines, but they have the advantage of being able to be more free. And you sometimes find, in this case, you find Yamal almost playing like a wing. So what happens to him, if he plays in a 4-3-3 formation, the two attackers, or the one attacker on his side, drifts inside or drops off to give him that space to use his skill. And you often see him trying to get inside onto his left foot and he tries to bend that ball in. And this allows him, because when he drifts into that space and this player takes up this position, it becomes a 1v1 situation. And what he does very well with his skill is create that opportunity, that window to look for the far post. And we've seen him score some phenomenal games in that regard. It works because you start wider, you come from an unmarked position. So when he's playing here, he's more unmarked than if the 10 was playing in the center, where he will have more attention. Here he has less congestion of defenders, which he can then utilize that space to create the space for that phenomenal strike that he has in his arsenal. The other thing is that he has in his, I would say in his arsenal, is his ability to play those killer passes. So sometimes you'll see Yamal dropping into these positions, and he's then able to afford the likes of the number 9 and even the number 8 to get into positions where he's able to now pin that ball into the spaces in behind the defense. So that is another skill that the wide number 10 has. And most importantly, what I said earlier on, is he's able to shoot from the edge of the box, whether it be centrally or whether it be coming from a wide position, cutting in and looking to bend that ball towards the far post. He has that skill. That can happen on both sides, depending on the strength of your player. Sometimes you'll find, and in most cases, a Yamal playing on the right so that it affords him the opportunity to cut in on his stronger foot and bend the ball. So I think that's what most coaches are doing. They're playing the position in the sense where a right-footed player would play on the right, or should I say a left-footed player would play on the right, and a right-footed player would play on the opposite side, which affords them that luxury. It works because you start wider from an unmarked position, you position yourself, you dodge the man-to-man marking, and you get time on the ball. You get enough time on the ball to cut inside. Great example that I think we can all recall is the great Ronaldinho. He had so much tricks in his bag, he was able to roam freely wherever he wanted. But his attacks mostly came from wider positions, where he's able to cut inside, minus players, and able to convert those opportunities. So yes, I think every team has that type of a player in their arsenal, and every team in the world, great teams in the world, are now looking for that particular number 10 who's more versatile. He's not just an attacking player, or should I say, he's not just a creative player. He's also a player that can assist them in the defensive phase. And by that, you will find in most cases today, the player that I just described now, which is Yamal, also does participate in the defensive phase, whether it be the initial press, which we call the high press, or if it means he has to track back and support his teammates in the defensive phase, especially when they play with 3 midfielders. It's important for Yamal, the 10, or even the 8, to add numbers in the midfield. We're now going to discuss the famous false 9. The false 9 started, as far as I know, when Pep Guardiola decided to give Messi a call one evening and said, listen, come, I want to see you to discuss the new role which I want you to play. And I think that came out of necessity because Barcelona didn't have the normal 6-foot central attacker, a number 9 who could win balls in the end. Obviously, the way they wanted to play as a unit, carrying the ball forward, circulating the ball, and keeping the ball to an extent where they find those triggers. And the perfect player that they found to do that was Messi, with all the skill in the world, a skillful player that could easily go past 2 or 3 or 4 defenders and still had the ability to score. Another player that comes to mind in the modern game is Foden, very underrated. I think he's a player similar to Palmer and some of the other players, Yamal, who has that ability to run at defenders and be able to score some spectacular goals. They drop deep. They play as a 9. And the problem with that is when they drop deep, they give the defenders a huge problem, because if you're playing with the back 4, and in this case, when you have this false 9 playing there, because now you have a situation that even if you play with a 4 and a 2 and a 3, even if you play with a formation like this, and now suddenly you move this player more as a number 6 with the 8 and a 10, now you create a diamond, which is what we call the false 9. He becomes an additional midfielder, but also an attacker when we have the ball. So can you imagine when the build-up phase takes place deeper down the field or further from the opposition's goal. Can you imagine this? When these two players and the 6 drops in, he now finds those pockets of space that he drops into. He now becomes a lethal weapon for his team because does the defender follow him? Does these 2 defenders, one of them follow him? And if they do follow him into the space here, these players become a threat. These 2 players become a threat. So it becomes very difficult to defend against because he drags those centre-backs out of position. Job again remains the same. Creativity, very key, but also goal scoring. If you look at the number of goals Messi scored from this position, unbelievable. I mean, currently in the World Cup, he scored 5 goals. Very dangerous player, especially in that particular role. It works. Why does it work? Because it breaks down the rigid man marking that you could employ if he was playing only as a 9, where these 2 guys would take care of him. And then obviously in midfield, these 2 guys become neutralized and your only player that can make play from deep would be your number 6. So this affords you, when you play with the false 9, to play with a player that doesn't have the physicality of a striker, but he has the scoring ability of a striker. He has the creativity of a midfielder, and he's very instrumental in the defensive phase because he is able to form the first line of press with the 2 other wide attackers. Very, very important for the team from a defensive perspective. He also is able, in possession, why it works is he's able to break the lines with those passes because when he drops in here, he then finds these players in good positions that he can play the ball to and significantly is able to make those third man runs from deep. So now you have the best of both worlds. You have a number 9 in as far as scoring, and you have a number 10 in as far as creativity, complemented by great defensive qualities. In Messi's case, when he plays as a number 10, he does become a luxury player. We don't see him doing the defensive part so much, but I suppose when you are Messi, you are not expected to defend. You are expected to score goals. So he becomes that luxury player, which we discussed earlier, was what we saw with Zidane. But generally, you want your false 9 to be able to be involved a lot more in the defensive phase and not only high up the field like we see Messi, he also has to drop deeper in. In summary, what stayed the same? The core of this number 10 position stayed the same. Has not changed much. The difference is today they do more work off the ball in as far as defending is concerned. Today, we are looking at more players playing that particular role and they are scarce. But hopefully in time, I think teams will focus on producing more of those type of players. So in fact, I don't think the position has changed. I just think the tactical awareness of the position has significantly changed. You have more freedom and at the same time, you have more responsibility as far as defending is concerned. In summary, the position didn't disappear. The luxury version died. The position merged in a defensive and a winger responsibility. Those are the 2 things that the position that changed significantly the way the number 10 operated. From the time that the number 10 emerged to the present day, those are the only changes. If you enjoyed the breakdown that we did today on the number 10, please be sure to look at the breakdown we did with the number 6. It was really thought-provoking and had a lot of insight. Please remember to like this video and subscribe to our channel. We promise to bring you more insight and more breakdowns of the other positions in the game of football.